being a bit like cheeky, what's the most expensive piece of art that you've either sold or seen sold? However much you can share.
I'm going to have to be careful here.
Yeah.
I probably would say pushing the 6-7 figure mark, and it was a Banksy Goa balloon, which was pretty strong work.
Iconic as well.
Yeah,
That's
it was
crazy.
Banksy's strongest piece he's ever done, which was pretty special.
That's
It's just nice to be, in the presence of a work like this and kind of see it firsthand.
That's
a piece
insane.
which I think was voted Britain's most favourite piece of art, and
Yeah.
something which has literally defined a movement and emblematic of his entire artistic career.
That's insane.
Quite special.
Yeah, that's mad.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of Banksys being bought and sold in the private market?
I think there was a massive surge since 2018. You
Yeah.
must have heard of the Banksy shredding.
Yeah.
So at Sotheby's, an original Goa balloon sold, and as the hammer went down, there was a beeping in the room,
Yeah.
and the piece started to shred,
Yeah.
and it stopped right at the bottom. So Banksy would have been at that auction, and no one knew it, and he was the one with the buzzer ticking it. And obviously then everyone was going, what's going on? This is mad. Especially the people who just forked out £1 million for the work, seeing the work just slowly disintegrating. I can imagine was a heart in mouth moment. But then the next day they came out, they rebranded it from Lovers in the Air to Lovers in the Bin 2018, and it doubled in price overnight because...
So the shredded piece?
Yeah. And it was on display.
That is
I think
crazy.
Sotheby's kind of knew what was going on.
Yeah,
They were like, oh gosh, this is amazing. It was the first time a work had ever been renamed at auction. The collectors who bought it, obviously a couple from, I think, Europe, I think it was Switzerland or Sweden, were originally like, that's ridiculous. But
wasn't that quite a gamble? Because what if they were just like, no, I'm pissed off, I want the...
Well, that's interesting. That's where, well, obviously you're at law. This is where the law side and the legislation of the art world comes into play. So as the gavel goes down, as the hammer goes down, that is the contract ended with Sotheby's. That is their agreement and kind of tenure finished.
So then it's the responsibility of the...
It is responsibility of the collectors. And so he waited until the gavel had gone down.
That is insane.
This is why, so he was quite clever doing that, and Sotheby's were not liable in that case. Yeah. I'm sure their court case could have been brought, but technically they were fine. They were.
Well, they also made £1 million overnight.
They just, and the collectors made £1 million overnight, and then you could have gone to see it for a month at Sotheby's. They had kind of put it on display, and it actually looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then it sold, I think it sold this year or last year for 3 or 4 times what these guys bought it for.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Absolutely mental.
I'd love to have seen that. Obviously, anything Banksy does just goes viral anyway.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Good to get some insight on it as well. So another thing sort of I'm curious about, like, how do you think digitalization has impacted art? Obviously, we've seen the crazy explosion of NFTs that came through, which I think obviously like people still don't entirely understand NFTs. And it's fairly nascent, but it has shown how like explosive it can be. Obviously, we had a piece by Beeple, which many people know about.
Yes.
Which
went for 69.2 million at Christie's sale last summer.
69.2 million. Like, what on earth makes a digital art piece worth $69 million? Like,
can I just say, with that sale, by the way, this guy has just never been heard of as of 3 years ago. He was working from his kind of house from home in marketing. That shot him up to becoming the third most expensive living artist ever. Behind Jeff Koons and David Hockney. This guy just comes out of the ethos, and it's just incredible that an NFT, what has been going for, NFTs has been going for 2 or 3 years, maybe a bit longer, but has really been in kind of the commercial retail spotlight for that long, has just commanded such a huge figure. And the guy who bought it, I believe, funny enough, works in tech.
Oh, really?
I think he works for kind of a trading platform of some sort. I can't quite remember his name. But I think NFTs, for me, and what I've spoken to with kind of colleagues in the market, quite simply is just an asset. It is not a piece of art. Mm-hmm. It's just like Bitcoin, a store of digital wealth. It's a JPEG with an image, but with kind of. I think it's just people are buying it purely for status. The reason why I love art is just like you. I get home from, funny enough, looking at a screen all day. The last thing I want to do is look at a screen. And so I'd much prefer to have this beautiful piece on the wall, which is kind of a physical asset that you can enjoy. But again, it's a story of wealth. It's kind of the decentralization of the financial market. Hence, the people, I think it's 85% of people that buy NFTs also buy Bitcoins, which is a crazy correlation. People aren't buying it who have a classic collection of art, as in a physical art.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting to get your take on that as well, actually, because I think it's still such a divisive topic in an area. I'm inclined to agree with you. I think NFTs, I don't think it's digital art as people have sort of like defined it. I think it's actually NFTs as a whole will become a success because of the utility of the technology rather than the actual.
And that's where blockchain comes into it too, which is actually now being implemented into the art market.
That's
so
crazy.
Obviously you know what blockchain is. It's just a ledger where each piece of information before is stored and literally cannot be tampered with. And obviously that's great in the art world when you're dealing with a Picasso, which is 200 years old. Sometimes it could be a fake, or sometimes there could be a bit of kind of rubbing out. So with blockchain, this enables, again, if you're purchasing online for the first time, it just makes things so much more straightforward, transparent, and most importantly, safe. If you've never bought before,
and it verifies like.
It verifies that. So I think this is what we're going to see in the next couple of years. People who buy online, which is, as I've spoken to you before, through digitalization, really straightforward and simple. It's from the post sale consultant chatting to you all the way through. You can buy through payment link, invoice, bank transfer, credit card. I mean, it's so straightforward. And then all the way up until delivery, whether it be in-house at that gallery or a third-party delivery company such as Queen's, Convelio, Good and Tate. There's many out there which do a proper silver service job up into your door. And that's I think what's doing really well at the moment.
That's great. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I do think there's definitely like a utility for that across many industries as well. So I think it's definitely watch this space in terms of like distributed ledger technology.
100%.
But have you come across any fakes in the art?
I've seen a couple online. Luckily,
can you tell or like?
There's I think the fakes tend to be in where there's the most limited edition print. So what a limited edition print is maybe what Banksy is a prime example. You have his originals, spray paint on canvas, stencil on canvas, acrylic on canvas, or oil, whatever it may be, or just on a piece of wall. These are going for millions upon millions of pounds, and obviously way out the price bracket of lots of people. So what an artist would do in that case is create a limited edition print run of said work, or even not create an original and just do limiteds. Now these could be through many kind of processes, from a lithograph, which is probably the oldest form of printing, where you create this kind of stone block, etch into the piece, put the paper down, press it really hard, and that's the imprint. So that's the lithograph. A silkscreen print is where you're kind of going with different stencils over and over again. And that was defined by Andy Warhol and Keith Haring as kind of the commercialization of the art market, making art for everyone, and that's what Warhol wanted to do. So let's go with that, for example. So Banksy created Full Girdle Balloon, 500 editions, 150 signed, 350 unsigned. The signs are now going for about $500,000. The unsigned are now going for about
prints.
£200,000 for a limited edition print from a blue chip artist. So it's, some people think of it, specifically what Damien Hirst has been doing the last few years, is literally a license to print money. But these have acted as great investments if you got in at the right time. So you could have bought a Banksy, another really lovely screen print by him is Choose Your Weapon. It's a yob of some sort, holding a dog, but it's a Keith Haring dog. So it's a really clever kind of motif, and his weapon is art, and that's why it's Choose Your Weapon. So it's a really cool work. Came out in 2011. You could have bought that for £5,000 back in 2011. Now they're changing for £125,000.
That is honestly crazy. Like
it's incredible. So this is where we start to think: is there a boom, or is there a bust going to come? So is there a bubble? So going back to your last question, why is Banksy growing so much? I think it's obviously through the shredding, and over the last few years, his prices have gone up and up and up. But what we're now seeing this year is a dip.
So we're actually in a dip at the moment.
The market's massively cooling off. You can see this through public sales at Phillips, Bonhams, Christie's and Sotheby's. The prices are now cooling down and becoming more realistic what you should be paying for that piece of work. And this is a good thing. This is just thinking long term for the artist, because if it kept on going, there could have been
unfeasible.
And you're the last person with a Banksy print at £200,000. So, give it another couple of years, and I guarantee you there'll be some another piece of incredible publicity,
Yeah.
or something will happen,
Yeah.
or he'll reveal his name maybe,
Yeah.
and then again, his market will go back.
That's been one of the smartest things, because for as long as I've like known of Banksy, one of the main things is that no one knows who he is, and this whole like mystery around his identity, whether he's a few people or one. Like there's always been loads of theories, right?
I think there's definitely a team of people,
Yeah.
but he's the guy with the idea, and he's the guy kind of making all of this happen. So fair play to him.
Yeah, mate, fair play to him.